Hello everyone, today is Friday, November 6th. As always, I'm your host for Collectibles and Coffee, Edward Nguyen. Beverage of choice today is water. I haven't had coffee all week, so I'm trying to mix it up. Today, we'll kind of talk about some of the most some of the most common mistakes people make. And the reason I bring this up, and I think it's important, is because every day when I'm on social media, I always see a huge surge of people who are really getting into this industry, and at times it feels like they're getting a little bit ahead of themselves. I see a lot of people fall into various pitfalls that can easily be avoided, and this is no surprise really with the recent surge of attention of how many people are starting to get in, uh, not just Pokemon, even just Magic, Pokemon, just collectibles as a whole. I see a lot of people are intrigued. People certainly know that there's money there. That's, to be perfectly honest, I think that's a big part of why people are being drawn to it. So it's bringing people in because people see that's where the money is. Maybe that's where I should go. And a lot of these people, it's very clear they don't really have the know-how. They don't really have the experience. They haven't really put in the time to learn, to see what's going on. And my concern is that a lot of these people, they're going to make a lot of very common mistakes, and it's going to cost them money. They're going to get burnt out from it, and it's going to come back to bite them. Maybe not now, maybe not in a week, maybe not in 2 weeks, but in a year, 6 months, depending on where their level of involvement in the hobby industry goes, it will come back to bite them. So here I'm really trying to share some of the mistakes that I see people deal with. I'll kind of reflect on some of my experiences with them. Some of these topics I will have kind of covered in the past. I do discuss about various pitfalls that people make in past episodes. I did a past episode on psychological fallacies when it comes to investing. I think a lot of these are worth rehashing because this is something that I will see become more and more common as more and more people do start to put serious money into this. So we'll hop right in. As mentioned before, a lot of people are entering the industry. Most of this is a pretty wide range of people. You have some people who are probably in my age range. I think that is probably the most reasonable demographic. And a big part of the people who are entering are people who have heard about Logic, Logan Paul, etc. All these celebrities who are spending big bucks. They're thinking back and they think those cards look familiar. Maybe I might have those somewhere. And then they go to their parents' house, they start looking in an attic, in the closet, etc. And they find these cards that they have. And now they're thinking that they hit a gold mine. I've heard a lot of experiences from various store owners who I'm friends with. People have talked about this a lot. A lot of people really seem to be bringing in their old Pokemon cards and thinking, I have a small fortune here. The reality situation, that's not the case. You see this online as well. People are always digging up cards saying, what do I have here? What's it worth? And the vast majority of the time, their cards are not as much as they think they are due to all sorts of reasons. Some of those reasons are fairly straightforward. They just don't have the right ones. They're cards that they thought were base set and may not necessarily be base set. They may be base set 2. That's already a huge drop in price. You're trying to compare a first edition mint version of a card versus your base set 2 version that you bought and stuck in your pocket and carried around on the playground at school, for example. Condition is one of those big things. People generally don't have a good sense of how valuable condition is in this industry, especially when you're first starting out. To a lot of people just seem to think cardboard's cardboard. Why is there necessarily more value associated with some of these things being in pristine condition? So that seems to be one of the more common mistakes that people make. It's simply just the lack of knowledge going in. People aren't really doing research for themselves. And I think that before you can really get in, before you can really get your feet wet, having some level of knowledge is important. In today's age, I don't think there's really an excuse for not going to Google. Even if you find an old Magic collection, if you find an old Pokemon collection, it doesn't really take that much effort. Even if I pick up some random thing that's on my desk For example, I have too much stuff on my desk. I'm not going to try and dig. You can, assuming it's in English, it's very, very simple to type in the name of a card, and I would presume that the Google search engine, it'll probably bring up your major retailers. It'll probably bring up an eBay link. It'll bring up something that would give you some idea of what your card is worth. Not having that prior knowledge before going in is really doing yourself a disservice. And if you're really trying to build a reputation in the community, if you're trying to start somewhere and get going, it's important that you do your research before going in, as opposed to simply taking the word of various strangers that on the internet or a game store who may or may not have your best interest in mind. In a similar vein, I see a lot of people getting caught up in FOMO. I think this is something that is very, very common. We've talked about this a lot on this channel, especially in the past. And I think it's always worth rehashing that FOMO is probably one of the strongest emotions that people feel. And it's one of the things that, more than anything else, gets in the way of you being able to make a good judgment on whether or not you should go forth with a decision, whether or not you should buy, whether or not you should sell. The event that you haven't heard before, FOMO, fear of missing out, it's basically a psychological phenomena where people have anxiety, people have this fear that something is going on without them. At its core, we can think back to high school, college. You maybe not everyone can relate to this, but you always feel like, is there something going on that's happening without me? Is there some cool party that's going on? Are people just out having a good time? People doing something that I'm not a part of? And it creates this very, very strong sense of negative emotion that there is something going on that I'm not a part of. It's really started to pick up in more recent years, especially with social media. Social media really feeds a lot of fuel into this fire. A lot of people really do get caught up thinking, especially in the world of collectibles, man, I had that. I had the opportunity to buy this. Why did I buy this? Why did I get rid of it? And now people are just missing out on this opportunity. Excuse me. We see this happening a lot in Magic, with the way card prices have risen so dramatically in the past few years, especially regarding reserve lists, regarding Power 9, regarding dual lands. A lot of people have that strong sense of FOMO where they missed out, possibly because they sold too early. Maybe they were in a pinch, they got rid of their legacy deck a few years back when they thought they wouldn't need it anymore, and now they look at prices, or maybe they're trying to buy it back, and the prices they sold at a few years ago are a fraction of the price they are now, and it bothers them. That's FOMO in one sense. On the flip side, people think, man, if I had bought my legacy deck a few years ago, I could very easily cash out my legacy deck now, with the way some of the prices have gone compared to how some of those things were back then. This happens in the real world too. This isn't necessarily something that's isolated to collectibles. People can think about how much they could have bought Bitcoin for, cryptocurrency, when it was in infancy about a decade ago. If you had bought any quantity of Bitcoin a decade ago in 2010, when it was, before it really caught on, you buy Bitcoin for pennies, literal pennies. It was sub dollar for a very, very, very long time. And there are plenty of posts, and you hear this. This was kind of more in line with the crypto boom that happened a few years ago. But now we're starting to see again. Now people are starting to think, when should I be getting on this train? Because I don't want this train to leave without me. And if I'm not on it, I'm just going to pay for it down the line. I'm going to regret it. So these are all senses of FOMOs. These are all just examples. This is something that, if you feel FOMO about something, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You just have to be aware that that is not something you want to get caught up in. It's okay to miss out on some things, because that's the reality of life. Not everything you're going to be able to be a part of. There'll be opportunities that will just pass you over. You just didn't jump on an opportunity when you had the chance to do so. It passed you by. It's unfortunate. That's the reality of life. Learning to accept that, and learning to be able to make a good judgment about when you should do it and when you should not, is going to really be a critical part. I think more than anything when it comes to investing, I think that is where FOMO really, really starts to trip people up, because they see people buying in, people spending money, and then they start to think, that's a lot of money going in there. A lot of people are really spending the big dollars. Maybe I should get on this before I don't have the ability to do this anymore. A lot of people in the Pokemon community, people are starting to feel this way. People are starting to feel like they should be spending money. They should be spending whatever they need to in order to get what they want before it becomes inaccessible to them. I think that is a valid concern, but giving into FOMO in the long run will cost you more often than not. It is always important to remember there will be another opportunity to buy. There will be another collection that comes through. You'll have another chance to invest your money somewhere. You don't have to jump on every opportunity, because not every opportunity is going to pay off for you. And being able to identify those, being able to identify the hits versus the misses, is something that does take a lot of experience. I'm okay with being perfectly honest and saying that I've definitely given to FOMO before. I definitely jumped on things that I wish I looked down the line and said, if I passed on that, I would have had that money to spend elsewhere, to be buying different things that made more sense. But got caught in FOMO at the time, and it came back to bite me. I'm okay to admit that, and being able to admit that is one of the ways that you can avoid making that same mistake in the future. In that same vein, understanding precedence is also something that is very valuable, and I think that's something that people don't give enough weight to. Granted, in one of the basic principles of investing is that past results do not guarantee future results. Looking at the past is simply one data point. We have more and more data that is available to us now. We have all these sites. eBay allows you to track history of past auctions. PWCC, if you look at the market price research, you can see what auctions have closed for in the past. We can look at completed eBay listings. We can look at, I presented Pokemon price before as another data point for looking at the price of graded Pokemon cards. All these things, TCG Player, all these different places. It's a lot of data. I've mentioned in a past episode regarding looking at data, being able to analyze data, and being able to make the most with that data. These are all important skills to have, and understanding the value of precedence is something that is absolutely important, but it's not everything. It can go both ways. Some people don't look at precedence. They don't look at the past. They don't see where this has trended, where this market has trended, where these types of cards have trended, where these collectibles have trended, and then they don't use that knowledge of what happened in the past to be able to make their judgment when it comes to buying, when it comes to selling, or they put too much weight on precedence and they think that, oh, this is how it played out before, this is how it's going to play out again now. And oftentimes the answer is somewhere in the middle. It is important to use precedence and have it available to you as a data point, as a tool, when it comes to understanding and making your decisions about what you should do with these cards, with your investments, with what you're buying in the future. But it's not everything, and sometimes you put too much weight on it, and you're not using enough of your own judgment, and you're putting too much weight on what's happened in the past and that will that will interfere with your judgment in being able to make a correct, sound decision. Time in the industry is something that is absolutely invaluable. This kind of really lines up very well with precedence. When you're in this for a long time, when I've done this for a while, I can go back and look at, I remember when X, and having that experience is something that unfortunately can't really be rushed. There's a reason that a lot of store owners, a lot of the more successful store owners, have been in business for a very long time, and that's really one of the reasons why it's such an uphill battle for newcomers to come in and try to get involved and get started. Simply because a lot of the people who have done this for a long time, they were in this before it got really big, before we have kind of the craze and the hype that's happening with this right now. They have the experience. They've seen it all. They've seen the hobby the game, the industry grow from when it was a much more narrow, very small community, small group of people that were involved, into it really starting to balloon and become a really commonplace sensation where everyone knows about Pokemon now. More and more people know about Magic. It's becoming more commonplace. The same idea is with Twitch. We know that a lot of the most popular streamers have basically been streaming content and have been doing content since the very beginning. Since Twitch started to become popular, I want to say probably 2011, 2012. A lot of the streamers, some of the more successful ones, continue to stream to this day. And they've really had that time to build up that community, to build up their following. And there's a lot of people that will subscribe to them, that will continue to subscribe to them, that continue to watch their content and support what they do. Same idea with some of your more successful store owners and retailers. They've been in this for a long time. They've been with the community. They've been there with their player base through the ups and downs. And if you've been this long enough, you know that, like with everything else, there's a lot of ups and downs for this industry. As a whole, the industry has grown over time. It's not really different than if you look at how the stock market has performed, how the S&P 500 has performed. Overall, it has been a positive trend. The market has trended upwards. Same idea with collectibles. It has become more and more popular. There's a bigger and bigger following for it. There's more people getting involved. And being there from the beginning, you really do get to see it all. And unfortunately, that's not really something you can rush. A lot of people seem to want to take shortcuts, and I see this when people are trying to make rash decisions or trying to get into this too quickly. They're starting to get in over their heads, and then it doesn't come back to bite them right away. They may still be riding some of this hype, some of this high for a week, a month, what have you, but at some point it will start to fall apart for them because they didn't have to deal with kind of the downs and the harder times that you do kind of see happen in this industry. And unfortunately, that's a mistake. There's no real fix to that. The only way you can really avoid it is to, one, you have to be able to make those mistakes yourself. That is one of the unfortunate realities of this, and that's not something that's always easy for people to hear. People want to know that they have control over what they're doing, they're making the right decisions, they're able to control what they do. And to some extent, that is true. You have a lot of control over what you do, but as I mentioned in my previous videos regarding transitioning to business and starting out, the reality is a lot of times there are things that you simply do not have control over. External factors, a lot of things will come back to bite you. You just have to take them in stride. And the best possible outcome for these unfortunate incidences is to be able to learn, what can I do to avoid this happening in the future? What can I do to insulate myself, my business, from these types of things happening again? Because now I should have the experience that if I do face a similar issue like this in the future, I can think back to this experience, to where something failed at this time, and I can properly make adjustments to make sure that doesn't happen again. That is something that comes with time, and that is something that there's no rushing. It's simply having experience by being in the industry for enough time. On the topic of time, people aren't valuing their time correctly, and this is something that I think is important to note at all levels. It doesn't matter if you're a casual collector, it doesn't matter if you're an investor looking to spend a lot of money for collectibles that will have good returns for you. It doesn't matter if you're a store owner. Your time, you have to be able to perceive that your time is valuable. You have a finite amount of time, you have a finite amount of resources, you only have so much of you to go around over the course of a day. Being able to focus your energies in the right place and the right time is going to ultimately maximize your returns. If you're a casual collector, you have to be able to take advantage of opportunities that come by and being stressed out about small differences is not really something that is going to benefit you in the long run. One of the most common examples is that right now, I mentioned this in yesterday's video, right now we have the 8% kickback for TCG player. It was announced a little bit earlier. It's 8%. So not the 10%, not kind of that big number that we're looking at, but in theory, it's better than nothing. Granted, 8% doesn't always cover sales tax in every state. I know some states have very high sales tax. So 8% may not even cover that, but it is a discount. Yesterday, I really stressed with people the importance of being able to go in and buy early, because the longer you wait, the more card prices will go up. People start snatching up the cheap copies on things. People want to jump on some various deals they have, and by not getting in early and buying when you can, a lot of people seem to think that I'll keep shopping around, I'll see if there's a better deal, I'll hold out, and it comes back to bite them. Because even though the kickback does cover a percentage of your loss, the card going up in price is going to cost you more money than what you would have saved if you just went out and pulled the trigger. And a lot of people, for some reason, they seem to value this. In real life, we look at a lot of similar things that people do to save money, which I find relatively absurd. I know that there's people out there that will drive further to save some money on gas, because the gas station that's further away is cheaper than the gas station that's close by. That is probably a prime example of people who aren't valuing their time. Your cost in going to a further gas station is, one, you're spending more gas to get there. So any amount you're saving, you're kind of losing by driving further. And then that's not factoring in the time that you spend doing this. You have to spend an additional amount of time going there and then coming back, as opposed to going to one that's closer to you. These types of habits do translate over into the hobby industry, and it's one of those things that dies hard. I don't fault anyone for trying to get a good deal, but if you aren't able to weigh how much more time something is going to cost you versus how much it's saving you, you have to start thinking that this is ultimately just costing me money. I can better spend this time doing something else that may be more productive, that may be better use of my time, that would probably net me more money than trying to just maybe pick around for a slightly better deal. So valuing your time is something that is more essential than people think, and probably not something that enough people are really trying to utilize. In a similar note, trying to spending too much time on social media is a common pitfall. With nowadays, everything's becoming so interconnected, especially in the age of COVID-19 and the pandemic. A lot of people spend more time on social media than they have in the past. I know that in my experience reading through Twitter and all these different media sites regarding things about collectibles is one, probably how a lot of people got into this to begin with. They saw some news about a friend who posted something on social media regarding Pokemon, about Logan Paul, about Logic, kind of people talking about Magic, trying to rediscover their hobbies, and it's really starting to draw people in, and then they see this and then they want a piece of the action as well. And seeing this on social media has really perpetuated some of this phenomena. And part of the problem is you start having just a whole slew of opinions come in. We think about things like The Secret Lair, Walking Dead. That was a month ago at this point. It's crazy how time flies, but thinking back to a month ago, there was a huge wave of discussion about what people should do. The most recent one, Jewel Lotus from Commander Legends, the Black Lotus that you can only use to play your commander. Same idea. A lot of people, a lot of opinions coming in about, is it good, is it bad, what's the market value? And if you're not careful, when you start letting social media influence you about getting in the way of how you think about what kind of decision you should make for yourself, then you start to follow and go down a pretty dangerous path of some of these people who aren't able to make a decision for themselves, but they get caught up in this large wave of social media that happens online, this large wave of information that gets strewn around, and they start either thinking and relating too hard to what these people are saying, and they're not thinking objectively, they're not trying to formulate their own opinion, and they're relying too much on the opinion of others. That's one of the biggest dangers of social media. I think that a lot of people do fall into that, and they don't really give themselves the time to think. They don't take the time to sit back and formulate their own opinion about, is this card really good? Is this card actually worth what people say it's worth? Is the market really headed in this direction? Do I really want to get on and follow these people in this direction, or do I need to do what's best for myself? People don't give enough weight into this. People don't spend enough time thinking about this, and this is, I think, one of the more dangerous things that people really do fall into. It's really one of the dangers of social media. There's just too much going on. There's too much out there. There's too many opinions. There's too many people with opinions. There's too many people trying to get into the market. There's too many people trying to leave the market. It's really, really hard to be able to filter out all the news and all just the constant stream of social media that comes in, and being able to formulate and come up with the opinion that's best for you. And when it comes to investing, if you're not able to think about yourself first, if you're not able to do what is best for you, then you start to fall into this trap of ultimately doing what's best for these people, because if your opinion is starting to match their opinion, your opinion may not be what's best for you, and you may start doing and falling in a trap of what's best for someone else. Another important thing, and probably kind of the last real thing, and I think this is really ties back to my videos about transitioning, becoming a business, is thinking of your exit strategy, of thinking when to sell. I've done an episode before on when to sell. There's a lot more detail about it there, but a lot of people, sometimes they get a little bit too greedy. They know that they have return already, and now they're starting to think, how can I get more return? Is this going to be something that continues to go up in the future? And for the most part, this ties into people not having an exit strategy when it comes to this. If you're an investor, you always need to think about an exit strategy. If you're a retail owner, always think about an exit strategy. Even if you're a casual collector and you're looking to put some money to hold on to assets that you think may appreciate over time, what is your exit strategy? Fundamentally, most people should have an idea of what that looks like. Even if you're just a very small casual collector and you want to spend some extra money per set, put some things aside, and when it grows, you should have an exit strategy. You should think, okay, if this card doubles in value, if this is one of the speculations that hits, I'm selling. Set that price that makes sense to you. Set that value where you're ready to pull that trigger. Same with investors. If my portfolio is worth X amount, and within a year I see this kind of return on it, I should be ready to sell. If it doesn't, maybe I'm okay holding on. Maybe in a year I need to reevaluate, see if there are some busts, see if there's some things I just need to cash out on and get rid of right away and move on. Maybe there are some things I want to add because these have done well. Maybe I can continue to grow with them and see, and before I decide to make an exit plan in the future. These are all things that are important to consider that I don't think enough people put weight into, that not enough people are trying to buy. And when people are buying, they're not putting enough weight into when to sell, when to get out, when they should be done with this. And a lot of people get kind of stuck. Then they feel like they're in a situation where, well, I can't really get out. I'm either in this for too much, I haven't seen the returns I wanted, or the returns I did want already passed. And because I didn't have an exit strategy, I wasn't ready to sell at the time, and now I'm stuck, and I'm making less money than I would have if I got out at the right time. This kind of goes in the same idea that if something is profitable, you should be happy with the return and get out. Most investments end up being busts. It's really, really hard to just basically only pick the winners. It's very likely that you'll have some mix of winners and some mix of losers. When you have a winner, even if you think that the future looks promising, that there's more room for this to grow, I'm personally a fan of the strategy of leaving the next 10% for the next guy. If he wants to buy this and he thinks that he can make money on it, and it does go up another 10%, great. I'm more than happy for him. He got an investment that paid off for him. But if I've made my money, I'm more than happy to lock in, see that return, take that return, and put into something else that could become the next best thing. Very likely, the next best thing, whatever you're looking to buy next, is going to be more profitable than whatever asset that you're holding on to, and maybe making 10% more. Because most of the time, if it's gone up, it becomes harder and harder for things to continue to grow up. And the reality situation is that most likely it's going to either stabilize after it's done going up, or it's going to start going back down. And these are things that when you get a little bit too greedy, you don't leave the 10% for the next guy, kind of the same pitfall that people fall into. The last real major thing is having a good understanding of the market. I think there's a lot of people who fall into the idea that this is easy money. If you heard some of the videos I've talked about in the past, it's not. That's kind of that's the short and sweet of it. It's not really easy money. There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of knowledge that's involved. When I look on subreddits, I see things. I see there's a Flipper subreddit that I look at occasionally, and I read and I see what people do, and it's very, very clear that there's too many people trying to get in who just have no idea what they're doing, and lacking that understanding of the market, lacking that knowledge that comes with time, that comes with experience, that comes with making mistakes, is something that is really going to put a pretty low ceiling on how successful you can be. And I think that the nature of the economy of the collectibles market really rewards people who put in that time, who've been in this for a long time, who have really kind of been through the ups and downs of this, and having an understanding of the market, understanding the direction of Magic, direction of Pokemon, understanding the direction of collectibles and how they go, understanding retail. These are all things that will ultimately be more rewarding than a lot of people in this flipping subreddit that I see, that they have no idea what they're buying, they have no idea why it's good, and they're just looking to make a quick buck. And this may sound like a slight against flippers. I honestly don't care about them. I don't really have an opinion about it one way or another. If someone sees an opportunity and there's money to be made there, go for it. I don't fault you for doing that in this time and age, especially when people are struggling right now, given a high employment rates. People may not be getting enough hours at their job. Trying to find a side hustle, totally something I can respect. Totally something that if it works for you, if it helps you pay your bills, go for it. But as mentioned, if you don't have the proper knowledge of the market that you're trying to get into, you will always, always, always perform worse than someone that has more experience in the market and has been with it longer. That's really ties back into time in the industry and really being in there for a while and knowing what mistakes people make. So that'll kind of wrap up today's episodes. These are some of the most common mistakes that people make. It's not necessarily a thrilling episode. It's not the prettiest episode. I think a lot of things I've said here probably do relate to a lot of people in some degree. I know that almost everything here that I've said has related to me in the past before, and I've fallen for these mistakes. I've made these mistakes before. But I think if this is something that you're looking to do seriously, if you're looking to pursue it, if you're looking before you spend a lot of money, it only makes sense that you should be doing your due diligence, do your research, understand what you're getting into, what you're spending your money on. What you're spending your money on before you go too deep and you start spending money that you may not necessarily have. That's probably one of the worst things you can do, is spending money you may not have on a speculative market, because you should expect some easy money, some easy returns. That's how a lot of people get hit really hard. I've seen it before. People end up selling things to me at a loss because what they did just didn't work out for them. They didn't do enough research. They got in ahead of themselves thinking that, hey, this is going to be easy, and the reality situation is that it's not. So that'll kind of wrap up today's episodes. If there's anything that that you think I missed, anything that you want to hear about, or maybe just an anecdote, I'd love to hear from you. So as always, you can find me on Twitter at edwin13. You can find the social media sites for Vermilion on the right. Thank you all for listening. Have a good weekend. Enjoy I enjoy the weather wherever you are. It's a little rainy, it's a little cold, but I like the cold here in Portland. So it's been kind of a nice relief from kind of the perpetual sun that we've been having. So this is definitely getting to fall weather. So I've been enjoying that. Thank you all for listening and have a good weekend. We'll be back here next week with more. Thanks again.